Hey guys, this is Tyler here in Estonia. It is December and I'm going to talk with everyone about what I believe the future for MGTOW and European Union will look like. So many guys here are from all over the world, of course, and I've heard of guys from almost every country on the planet that have contacted me or commented on my channel, and this is awesome. We're having such a expansive effort and it's truly making a difference, honestly. There's many guys I believe that MGTOW has saved. It's just making guys feel better about their situation. Going their own way, obviously, I think is long-term the most beneficial tool here, especially with the current condition of the world. And it certainly can serve as even a temporary tool for guys that are going through tough times. Many of my guys here that follow me come from European Union. Europe in general, but especially EU. Canada, US, and then EU's second largest audience, and I think it's a very important region to be following for the sake of MGTOW and what could be the future here. Firstly, I think in the whole of Europe, it's going to continue to explode. MGTOW in some European Union countries will continue to surge in the next 5 to 10 years. Absolutely. This is just due to a lot of the factors that I've discussed in previous videos. It has to do with how governments are changing, corporations, how marriage situations for many guys in child custody, the overall climate of the countries, immigration policies, of course, have a lot of impact on the country, taxes, and among other factors. And this has all led to this explosion in MGTOW in European Union, just as it has in Canada and the US. And that's why I think we're really onto something, guys. I mean, anyone that's in this right now, this will become enormous, honestly, in the next 10 years. I foresee, honestly, there's going to be big business enterprises among other entities that are formed just for MGTOW guys, because it's going to be such a large demographic. What we're also seeing heavily in MGTOW is that I'm finding people that contact me come from across the spectrum. It's not just like one type of guy or a few type of guys. I think especially in the manosphere, in the PUA, red pill communities, it was more concentrated within certain segments of society, whereas I believe with MGTOW, it is truly across the board. There's guys that are both poor and wealthy and everything in between that are now part of this MGTOW philosophy. It's a very, very base system of thought, and this is why it's going to continue to grow. I've heard of guys mentioning that it's more natural, and I certainly agree here. I think overall it just makes guys feel better. Overall, across the board, no matter the background, the economic class, guys just feel better, honestly, being part of this MGTOW philosophy. And so going back though to the European Union, certainly EU could implement measures to be very restrictive from groups like ours emerging in organic ways. And this is obviously something that we have to be prepped for and we have to closely follow. On the other side though, there are European countries that are not part of the EU that we certainly can have a lot of activity and really focus on growth. We can use these countries as centers of growth, basically having a headquarters in these particular areas. There's European countries I've mentioned before, Serbia, Belarus being two of them, where we can certainly concentrate some of the center growth of MGTOW, and this is, I think, very fortunate in our case. These countries, I'm not saying that they're perfect, but something that you will notice often is that they need to have a lot of business activity. They need to have people that are engaging in commerce and are willing to spend in their countries. And I think if they don't necessarily mind if if they have these more countercultural movements in these countries, as long as it's peaceful and everything, it's within the law, everything is typically fine. And I also have heard from guys here that we should also perhaps, especially in other places in EU countries, not necessarily use terms, and also in general we have to use keywords and descriptive terms that don't set off red flags. So I think especially for guys that come from the EU, they're going to need to really be conscious that there are people, and especially governments, that do not like this philosophy. But with that being said, I don't think it's as countercultural as other philosophies, and I don't see it as stirring us up as much problems, because as Sandman has mentioned, often if you simply don't engage, if you don't engage other classes or other groups or the government, that sometimes is the best way to control things from the get-go. I mean, being that we're guys that we just simply have walked away, that in itself is a huge help here. Back to the EU though, again, is that EU trajectory, as many guys here know, they have kind of guidelines for the next 10 to 20 years of initiatives they want to accomplish and complete. If you look at like energy initiatives are huge, several billion, hundreds of billions, almost I think $500 million in the next 10 years they want to spend on these quote-unquote alternative energy initiatives. This is just one example. These are the initiatives that EU is focused on. They are focused on public education, of course, and development in certain countries. There's potentially some new EU countries that will come about in the next 5 years. Unfortunately here, at least one or two of those countries could be in the Balkans. At the time being, we don't know for certain. And also England, of course, will be out of the EU as of the end of December, which will be interesting to see how that plays out in England. These initiatives, so obviously, are big driving forces of the EU and their governing bodies. What we're seeing though is that across the spectrum and in many of the EU countries, I mean, I've heard from all of you guys that relationships are such a problem point for so many guys. And it's in Italy, Spain, Germany, everywhere, honestly. I just listed a few countries here. It's across the board. Guys are encountering the same problems over and over. And then when we get into long-term relationships within family courts, marriage and child custody laws, it's a huge problem point here. Then if we look again at short-term relationships, many guys that are seeking relationships now, like Generation Z, they're just simply not even getting an opportunity to have one, and so they don't even experience this. And this obviously has formed this new like incel class of guy here. And so we are seeing groups across the board. I will admit myself, I have not been married and I don't have kids. Have I had relationships? Yes. So I'm certainly not in this incel category, but I know that there's guys here that can be just as beneficial, that have been through marriage and child court systems, and I think are great assets for the community, just as I believe incels are also. We have guys that are across the spectrum also in this respect. And where I really see though this like driving force is this Generation Z is a key demographic, part of the millennial demographic. Generation X obviously were the first primary contribute to MGTOW philosophy. They really kind of set the foundation, and now it's kind of a mix between millennial and soon to be Generation Z that are also now big contributors here. And I just see, honestly, in most of the European Union countries that Generation Z guys are going to be really frustrated. Many of these guys will be in the same position as guys from Canada and the US like 10 or 15 years ago. The millennials, they're kind of going to be in the same shoes, even in countries that have been historically quite poor. Places like in Central maybe Eastern Europe, and these places I think are we're going to see kind of the same trends. Baltics, for example, this is obviously where we can really focus on big growth here and try to use this as a way of positively impacting young men's lives. And that's kind of where I see this growing here. Yes, the EU, I think they may present some problems for our community. I don't think it's anything that we can't overcome. And I think also the fact that we're willing to utilize other systems here, we're willing to use like blockchain payment systems like this, and also essentially keeping stuff very anonymous and discreet, and just ensuring that we're seen in a positive light so that we can continue to operate, because this obviously is doing a huge benefit for many guys here, and this has really helped a lot of people overcome tough situations. I recently saw a documentary on Chris Watts. You guys may be familiar with him. He was involved in a famous case in Colorado, and he will say he took out like 4 of his family members, went to court, and he got a like life or 2 or 3 life sentences, I can't recall. And I think Chris Watts, though, I mean, this guy, just like many other guys in prison now or that went to prison, MGTOW would have saved these guys. They would not. I don't think they would have gone down the path they went. At least some of them, maybe others would have, if they had been part of this community. I look at a guy like him, and he would have been a prime candidate for a MGTOW community here. So this is where I also think that, especially in North America, guys that have been in like incarcerated, or in Europe, in England, there's much opportunity to really penetrate these guys and to help infuse them with a positive perspective on life, and about ultimately pursuing their own path for enriching their own lives, not for anyone else here. But we're fortunate here. We have a solid community. Up until now, we, unlike in the PUA, Red Pill Manosphere community, I see a lot more guys kind of clashing, having online disputes, and all sorts of drama, unnecessary drama. If you have problems with someone, just contact them and see if some beef, see if there's an issue, and just be certain there's actually a problem before you go forth with anything. I look forward to all of your feedback below, and thank you.